My name is Carolina Ödman and I'm an Associate Professor at the University of the Western Cape and Associate Director of the Inter-University Institute for Data-Intensive Astronomy. I'm very lucky in the sense that I work in science, but I don't spend all my time doing scientific research because I work at the interface of science and society and technology and community, and so my work is really at the heart of making communities benefit from the fact that we're doing, cutting-edge, world-class science in this country. And so my work involves a lot of making sure that the benefits of science reach our communities. So whether it is through making it available or whether it is through making sure that technologies are used to develop skills that are very important for the country, for the economic development of the country and things like that, I sort of call it science for development, because science contributes to development, but often it takes a while, for example, for space materials to be used in the medical industry, for example. But if we really put our efforts into it directly, we can shorten that time frame and make sure that investment in science and technology, like the Square Kilometre Array telescope and things like that, benefit people much faster, and in many other ways as well, many diverse ways. I was really keen to create a resource that talks about careers in astronomy and the great career options that science offers. And so I created a resource that I wanted to be relatable. There is something that exists already, but it's very formal, and it doesn't really help make science be approachable. It makes science sound difficult and for only really good people. I wasn't the best in science at school, but I persevered and I worked hard, and then I caught up. And it really is 90%, sticking with it. It's not just about being gifted. So I wanted to create this resource, and I wanted it to be relatable. So instead of writing down what you need to know to become an astronomer, I went and asked some of our young astronomers and our graduate students what they thought was good about astronomy. What they said was just brilliant. And I thought, well, now I have this resource in English, why shouldn't I just translate it into all the South African languages? Because surely a careers resource is not very technical, and it shouldn't be that difficult to translate. And yeah, I was very wrong. Very quickly I realized that there's no word for astronomer in a lot of the African languages. And that's a huge barrier to access. So not to be defeated by a big barrier to access, I thought, okay, let's try to chip at this problem. And so I was introduced to the team in the Xhosa department at the University of the Western Cape, and we started working on translating this resource into isiXhosa. I also had colleagues who translated it into Sotho, into Setswana, Afrikaans, of course, and we're trying to get many more languages. The next language hopefully will be Zulu. And it started with, how do we call an astronomer? And discussing between a linguistics master student and astronomy master students, and with these, cross-pollination of fields, we came up with things like, let's stretch meanings of words that exist. People listen to the radio, right? And we do radio astronomy, but it doesn't mean that we're listening to space. Radio waves are in fact a form of light. So to try to not confuse and not mislead, we decided let's use the word for frequency, because this is a word that radio DJs use all the time, the frequency of the radio stations. So we thought, okay, let's work on that instead. If there's no word for astronomer, but there is a word for weather forecaster, we can stretch that into meaning scientist of the sky, which is what an astronomer is. It's a scientist of the sky. What we call an open cluster is a cluster of stars that come from the same place and is sort of growing out as sort of a cloud of stars. And there is one that we can see. It's the Pleiades constellation. But instead of just trying to make up a word for open cluster, we can use the word for the Pleiades, which is isilemela, which is a beautiful word. So why not take that word and mean open cluster, so that we acknowledge that people were aware of these things. They knew that this was a special type of grouping of stars and so on. and really give Indigenous knowledge its place in modern science.
I am Zulile Tiwani. I am doing a BSc in physical science at UWC. Okay, so I decided to study science because of my mother. So my mother's really passionate about science, and growing up there was never that barrier that a woman can't do science because here she is, right? So then that's how I got interested in science, and sometimes we'll talk about science and the concepts for a really long time. And the project I'm working on with Carolina focuses on skills, right? Because right now there's a shortage of skilled graduates, right? We have graduates, but they don't have the necessary skills that are needed in the workplace. So this project really focuses on what those skills are, the skills that graduates need. I knew that Carolina was translating science into our languages, South African languages. And I told her that I speak Zulu, and she said that's perfect because I want to translate something in Zulu. So then that's how I'm involved in this project right now.
I had a high school teacher, and until then I was interested in science, but I didn't think it was something that I could do. I thought this was something for really smart people and for guys and things. And our physics teacher one day just took us through E equals mc squared, which is Einstein's equation, and that equation sort of symbolized everything that I could never reach. And he just explained it in a way that we could understand. He made us add up the mass of 2 hydrogen atoms and compare it with helium, and there was a little bit missing. And we're like, what is that? And he said, that's the energy that binds them. And suddenly I realized that, oh my word, I can understand something that I thought was way beyond me if I study physics. And then I was hooked. Then I was really hooked. So my first degree was in physics, which is the general science of everything. And then I specialized in astrophysics. So this is astronomy and the physical phenomena that happen out in space. So I was born in Switzerland from Swedish parents. So I was literally born an expat. And I went to school in Switzerland. So my first language at school was French. I studied at the university in Switzerland, and then I got an opportunity to study for a PhD in England at Cambridge. So obviously I took that opportunity. And then right at the end of my PhD, I had a bit of bursary money left. And there was a professor in Cambridge who had just started the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences in Muizenberg. And he told me just in passing like that, oh, why don't you come and spend a month with us? And I said, yes, I would love that. So I went to my grant committee and I asked them if I could use that money that was left from my grant to buy a flight to South Africa. And they said yes. So I came to South Africa and I spent a month here, and it changed my life. I had never seen a place like this. I'd never met people so open and so friendly, and I'd never seen a country so hungry for defining its own history. And I think coming from Europe, where people are quite disillusioned, people don't necessarily believe in voting and so on, it's a little bit, oh, the system's there and everything's working and so on. Coming here and feeling really the vibe of this country of we own our history, we're now writing it ourselves, I really got seduced and I fell in love with the place. And I felt like this is a place where what you do matters. And so when I came 6 years later in 2010 was when I came for good. I came to get married actually. And I regret nothing. I couldn't be happier. I couldn't feel more at home than in this country. It's the diversity of people, the diversity of cultures, of flavors, yet there's something that's common to everybody, and that's family. And it's just, I find it so precious. It's very different to what I grew up in, which is sort of a very individualistic culture. You know, everybody keep to themselves. You don't want to bother anyone and things. Here, everybody lives together, and it brings us close. I really love it, and it keeps us grounded, keeps us real. A work day for me starts with, oh, there's a lot of emailing, because I have to communicate with a lot of people on lots of different projects. So I always take, say, a couple of hours of emailing. I'll do half an hour in the morning for anything that's urgent, and otherwise I'll keep it at the end of the day, because then I finish my day by clicking send, and then I'm good. Otherwise, if I have a moment, I do a lot of communication. So for example, I'll write an article about science in understandable terms, and I'll put it on a website. So I'll generate a lot of materials like that, for example, or I'll promote our young people.